Table Incorporated. After hours.
Back Unfiltered fam to your fave unfiltered podcast. Oh my I'm done.
Oh my god.
Welcome back Unfiltered fam to your favorite unfiltered history. The one and only podcast that we turn boring history into fun and entertaining videos you'll actually watch. I'm Emma.
I'm Kennedy.
I'm Maya.
I'm Bella.
And I'm Jalen. Buckle up, Unfiltered fam. We're flying into the sky for one of the most uplifting stories from the Cold War.
What we'll be covering. In this episode, we're going to answer the big 5 questions, and you know the drill. Who, what, when, where, and why.
We'll break down what the Berlin blockade was and how the Soviet Union tried to block out a whole city.
Then we'll tell you how the Allies responded with the Berlin airlift delivering supplies by plane nonstop for over a year.
We'll also talk about the real heroes of the story, a U.S. pilot who became known as the Candy Bomber. A few pieces of chocolate changed lives.
And even an interview with the one and only Candy Bomber, aka Gil Halvorsen himself.
So buckle up, because we're about to fly back to 1948, where the sky over Berlin was full of hope.
Before we get started, and speaking of flying high, today's episode is brought to you by our favorite winged fuel, Red Bull.
Red Bull gives you wings, just like the pilots of the Berlin airlift.
Whether you're flying a cargo plane, editing a podcast for history class, or dropping candy from the sky, Red Bull's got your back with energy that soars.
Try the original flavors are our personal favorite, wild berry.
You might be asking who was involved. After World War II, Germany was divided into 4 zones, controlled by the US, Britain, France, and the Soviet Union. The capital city, Berlin, was also split into 2 sides, West and East Berlin.
The main people involved included the Soviet Union, led by Joseph Stalin. On the other side, the Western Allies, mainly the United States and Britain.
And don't forget one of our very special American pilot, Gil Halvorsen, aka the Candy Bomber.
Well, what exactly happened? In June 1948, the Soviets blocked all roads, railways, and canals going into West Berlin. They wanted to cut off food, fuel, and other supplies.
This is known as the Berlin blockade. This forced the Western Allies out and took full control over the city.
But instead of giving in, the US and Britain launched a plan, the Berlin airlift. The plan involved flying into Berlin nonstop and dropping supplies into the cities to keep them alive. So where did it happen?
This all happened in Berlin, Germany, specifically the western part, which was controlled by the Allies and surrounded by the Soviet Union.
The Soviets thought that they could start out West Berlin, but instead it turned into a plan for the Berlin airlift that brought hope and supplies from the sky.
You might be asking yourself when this occurred. The Berlin blockade started in June 1948 and lasted until May 1949, almost a whole year.
The airlift started right after the blockade began and kept going until the Soviets gave up.
It was one of the first big showdowns of the Cold War, which was a long period of tension between the US and the Soviet Union.
Why did it happen, and why is it significant?
The Soviets were mad because the Western Allies introduced a new currency in their zone. Stalin didn't want a strong West Germany.
So, he tried to block off Berlin and take it over, but his plan did not go as planned.
Instead, the airlift made the US and Britain powered over the blockade. It also showed that they were very serious about protecting freedom without fighting.
And in the middle of it all, one pilot, Gil Halvorsen, aka Candy Bomber, started doing something special for the kids of Berlin.
Cut that,
Here's
Maya.
the clip towards, or wait.
Here's us doing the interview.
Yeah.
We're super excited to interview one of the most famous pilots from the Berlin airlift, the one and only Gil Halvorsen, the Candy Bomber.
Hi there, I was just a regular pilot flying supplies into Berlin, and one day I saw a bunch of kids watching the planes, so I gave them my last piece of candy.
And that small moment turned into something big, right?
Yep, I started dropping candy from my plane using parachutes made out of handkerchiefs. I wiggled my plane's wings so the kids knew it was me.
Why did you do it?
Because those kids had nothing, no toys, barely any food, and I wanted to give them hope, just a little bit of happiness.
Did people back home support it?
They sure did. Soon people all over the US were sending me candy to drop over to these kids.
Thank you for coming to give our viewers a real-life interview with the man who changed lives of the kids and people in Berlin forever.
Thank you for having me. Candyman out!
The Berlin airlift was a huge moment in the Cold War history. It showed the world that the US and its allies were willing to stand up to the Soviets without starting a war.
And it showed how regular people like Gil Halvorsen can make a difference even with something as small as candy.
In a time of fear and conflict, the Candy Bomber reminded people that there's always hope.
Thanks for tuning in to your favorite unfiltered history lesson. Make sure you subscribe and hit that like button for more unfiltered history.
remember, sometimes hope can fall from the sky.
Yeah!